Coming up on Network Africa. Fresh crises appear to be brewing in the Democratic Republic of Congo, with calls for President Joseph Kabila to step down. In Egypt, pharmacists appear to be running short of drugs owing to the currency situation. And the Super Falcons of Nigeria battle it out with Black Queens of Ghana today at the Africa Women Cup of Nations in Cameroon. Well, crisis is looming in the Democratic Republic of Congo as civil society activists have launched a new pro-democracy campaign to press for President Joseph Kabila to resign. Mr. Kabila's second and last term comes to an end on December 19th, and voters were due to go to the polls on November 27th to elect his successor. But a political deal brokered last month by the government with one faction of the opposition postponed the election till April 2018. In defiance to the controversial deal, a coalition of pro-democracy movements launched a Bye Bye Kabila campaign to pile up pressure on the president in the run-up to the December deadline. The three movements behind the campaign say they will organize massive anti-government protests, which could lead to fresh deadly clashes with security forces. Last September, a crackdown on an anti-government protest left at least 50 people dead. Well, it's been a tense day in Bamenda, the main city in English-speaking northwestern Cameroon, with the lawyers and teachers protesting the influence exerted by Francophone speakers on them in a country that's officially bilingual. The clashes erupted after the Cameroon Teachers Trade Union called a strike to protest against the dominance of their Francophone colleagues in the education sector. The tension between the Anglophone and Francophone parts of the country has also seen lawyers calling for the translation of legal texts into English. One person was reported to have been killed as anger over the imposition of French in schools in Anglophone parts of the country came to a head. Security forces fired tear gas and live bullets at anti-government protesters. Eyewitnesses described the people being beaten, kicked and dragged away by the military. A leading rights group in South Sudan has accused rebels and government forces in the country of committing horrific abuses like burning a lorry load of people to death and raping and hacking women and children. Atrocities recorded by Human Rights Watch also include suspected rebels ambushing a convoy of cars carrying civilians fleeing Yei-town in October. The government and rebel forces are yet to make any comment on these allegations. A new round of fighting between forces allied with President Salva Kiir and his sacked deputy Riek Machar broke out in July after a peace deal also collapsed. Well, the case against 5 Zimbabwean war veterans charged with insulting President Robert Mugabe has collapsed. A magistrate's court in the capital, Harare, set aside the charges after the prosecution was not ready to proceed with the trial for 2 consecutive days. The 5 were charged after issuing a statement earlier this year accusing 92-year-old president of dictatorial behavior, saying that they would not support him for re-election in the 2018 poll. For the trial to resume, the prosecution will have to file the case afresh and summon back to court the war veterans. Dengue fever has killed at least 20 people in Burkina Faso, where about 2,000 cases of the disease have been recorded. Dengue is a mosquito-borne disease which is prevalent in subtropical and tropical regions, including Africa. It's a major cause of illness worldwide, causing about 100 million episodes of feverish illness a year. The outbreak of the disease in Burkina Faso has caused alarm among the population, and officials are trying to avoid any widespread panic. Cases of dengue in Burkina Faso have been reported from all 12 districts of Ouagadougou, the capital. The World Health Organization has been speaking on this. Now, two other regions, the Sahel region in the north and the Hauts Basins region in the west, have also reported cases. Pharmacists across Egypt say they are running short of medicine, some of them lifesavers. Now, this comes as the Egyptian pound drops, coupled with strict government price caps, which has made scores of products unprofitable and to produce or import. Now, the shortages include some cancer treatments as well as basic items like insulin, tetanus shots, and contraceptive pills.
Unable to raise prices above levels set by the Health Ministry, but now paying roughly twice as much to import drugs or active ingredients, pharmaceutical firms say they have been forced to phase out certain medicines to stay in business.
Imported drugs that have no alternatives, like some cancer treatments, is a problem that we must find a solution to. The Health Ministry must see how to move the prices of these drugs for the Chamber of Commerce of Medicine Production, or for importers to be able to make them available, even if that will happen without a profit margin, because patients are the priority.
Egypt floated its currency on November the 3rd, abandoning a peg of 8.8 pounds to the US dollar and allowing the currency to roughly half in value. The float helped the cash-strapped government clinch a $12 billion IMF loan that it hopes will unlock investment and revive growth that has been hampered by political uncertainty since the 2011 uprising that toppled President Hosni Mubarak. But the medicine shortage is piling pressure on the government of General-turned-President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who has been at pains to reassure a populace already struggling with double-digit inflation and intermittent shortages that they would be shielded from the worst effect of economic reforms. In Cairo, the move has angered the public.
When it comes to medicine, we are looking for them. For example, I'm a diabetes patient. We look for the medicine and we can't find it. Sometimes we can't even find diabetes pens for testing.
The Health Ministry has blamed the problem on panicking Egyptians ordering medicines, saying it will not raise prices. But drug shortages are not new to Egypt. More medicines had already begun disappearing from shelves early this year as a severe shortage of dollars in the banks meant pharmaceutical firms could not pay for the necessary imports. Egypt has struggled to earn enough dollars since the 2011 uprising scared off foreign investors and tourists, and the central bank drained its reserves, defending the currency peg.
I don't know what's going on in Africa, but to tell us more about how African countries are being affected in their economies, our Channel's business news editor, Bosun Omofai, joins us on Network Africa. Thank you so much for joining us.
What's going on in Africa? What's going on in Egypt?
I don't know, in Egypt, yeah, but we talk about Nigeria as well, the economic recession, and then Egypt, citizens are feeling the effect of what's happening to their currency. Now, how can the government help cushion the effect?
There are a lot of currency imbalances in a number of African countries due to different problems. Again, for a number of African countries, it has to do with commodities, whether it is gold or crude oil. So you're talking about South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Ivory Coast, and a few others. Then you have others that have some peculiar problems, like Egypt, because of the uprising. You've seen since the ousting of Hosni Mubarak back then. Politically speaking, Egypt had it a little bit tough from a political point of view. Then you find a number of the downing of aircrafts, whether it has to do with terrorism and what have you. So Egypt being a gateway between the Arab countries, or what you call the GCC countries, and North Africa, and a gateway to the rest of Africa, Egypt is very, very crucial from an economic point of view. It's the third largest economy in Africa, is the largest economy in North Africa, excluding sub-Saharan Africa. To that extent, Egypt is very crucial to the rest of the world. Its currency, which is the pound, is convertible, unlike the Nigerian naira. So the Egyptian pound is tied to the British pound. So if you see something hit the British pound, then the Egyptian pound will take some heat, as it were. But looking at how the last currency, flotation or flexible exchange rate that was introduced a few weeks ago, the central bank, the International Monetary Fund had been supporting Egypt in terms of saying, look, this will help. It will help the country getting more revenue. There will be inflows of currencies from around the world. It will help rebalance again, but there are a lot of fiscal issues to be addressed.
Yeah, but this floating of currency, it's supposed to be good in a way for Egypt because it has helped them to clinch a loan deal with the IMF. So, I mean,
it's a condition which the IMF and a few others surreptitiously told Nigeria to do, and Nigeria went along the same route. But again, for an economy that is already fragile, like Egypt, like Nigeria, floating a currency at such a difficult time becomes very difficult. It's better to float a currency when your current account balances, your foreign reserves are in some good shape. When foreign investors haven't run away, quote unquote. Foreign investors had left Nigeria massively just before the 2015 March 28 elections, and they haven't really returned. Floating a currency after that was not good. Maybe if Nigeria had floated this currency 2014 or 2013, oil at $120, $100 a barrel, that would have been good. If all the political crises from Hosni Mubarak to former President Morsi in Egypt and the rest, if all those political volatility haven't happened, perhaps it would be a good time for Egypt to float its currency. But if you note that despite all these problems, Egypt will have to find a way. So I go back to your first question. What should the government do in Egypt? You see, find a number of political news that is making investors unhappy. Look at the death sentence on the former President Morsi. It's also revised or set aside by another court. Investors seem to like uncertainties, and that is part of what you see in Egypt. The initial honeymoon from November 3rd, currency flotation is tapering off a little bit. The stock market made some comeback, the Egyptian stock market and what have you, but over time it seems tapered off a little bit, and we're now beginning to see the full effect because the cost of bringing drugs, food, water, medical supplies, the basic necessities of life is beginning to hit in on the people, because now you're allowing the market to determine the exchange rate of the Egyptian pound, and that is not a very good time.
What are the similarities, differences between what's going on in Egypt and what's going on here in Nigeria? Nigeria is trying to bounce back, Egypt is trying to bounce back. Which one of them, in your opinion, will achieve this first?
Well, it's a little bit difficult, as you say, different folks for different folks, as it were. Egypt's key problem, it has to do with the terror risk. Whether it is Sharm el-Sheikh, where it has a major...
But there's terror risk in Nigeria as well.
Yes, but the terror risk is different. If you're flying the Egyptian airspace, you have your heart in your mouth. Yeah. If you're flying over Nigeria's airspace, just close your eyes, sit back, fold your hands and enjoy the flight, as it were. However, on the ground, the situation is a little bit different. Yeah. So we have different insecurity problems here. In terms of current account balances and deficits and debts and currency status, it's also different between Egypt and Nigeria. However, we're on the same continent. We face a number of issues that are similar. Again, investors will weigh this insecurity in Egypt and weigh the insecurity also in Nigeria and give it a certain percentage in their consideration when they want to invest in the economy. Are they comfortable that the currency flotation will help Egypt come out of the problem? Maybe, maybe not. $12 billion from Egypt looks like a big sum of money. Nigeria is looking for $30 billion. It looks like a drop in the ocean for Nigeria. $12 billion from the IMF for Egypt is also a bit of a drop in an ocean for Egypt, considering the size of that economy and its strategic gateway to for North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the GCC countries. So it's very difficult, and the Arab world. It's difficult for Egypt, and it's a very tight rope also for Nigeria. When you do currency flotation, when it is suggested to you as a pill or multivitamin when you're already sick, it becomes a very difficult problem to do. But if it was given to you maybe when you have what you call the reserves to support it, when you're floating the currency, you need a very robust base to carry it. It is not a good time when your reserves, your current account, everything is going negative. Then you now float a currency, you're just going to bleed you out. Look at what happened.
Okay, do you see, probably other let me put it this way. Nigeria is considered the biggest country in Africa, the big brother of Africa, and
the biggest economy.
So big, yeah. But
yes.
Do you, if we were able to fall into this problem, do you see other African countries, apart from Egypt, also facing the same economic problems?
There are concerns, and that's your first major point, and which was very, very good. We have a number of issues here. Ivory Coast is facing a number of issues, even though they don't have as much as commodity volatility as we have, because cocoa and coffee and a few other things is what they depend on. But for the big boys across the country, with the exception again maybe of Kenya, the rest have a lot of currency problems. Even Kenya, as we speak, has a number of currency volatility a problem, again because the dollar is strong globally, and that is pushing the euro, pushing the British pound, and it's pushing everybody in between, whether Naira or the Egyptian pound.
Thank you so much for that insight, Channel's business editor, Wilson Ofumafai. When we come back on Network Africa, about now, the Super Falcons of Nigeria are battling it out with Black Queens of Ghana at the African Women Cup of Nations in Cameroon.